Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome, well not welcome back, but welcome to another, I guess, Deltarune theory? This is The Dark Depths of Deltarune's Susie, and this is by Vivat Veritas, and of course this is one of those videos that came across my YouTube suggestion feed a couple days ago, and I guess it's, well I mean, from what I can understand, I would imagine that it's a character analysis of Susie and what is potentially her past, because, you know, we haven't actually found out that much about her in the games, besides the fact that, you know, she may or may not be homeless. She either doesn't come from a good home or is an orphan, and there's a whole thing about her being hungry, so that could either mean, you know, she's always hungry, like there's something going on with her that where she's always hungry, or she's always hungry in the sense that she doesn't eat, that she doesn't get enough to eat. So, yeah, not the best circumstances as it would be. So, I mean, yeah, I'm really interested to see where this video goes. I mean, it's not that long, but, you know, I'm always, you know, interested. I know I've been watching a lot of Half-Bred Chaos, recently. And, as I've said before, I watch them, one, because I like their videos, and two, they also do rather well on the channel, so, you know, I can have my cake and eat it too. But I am always looking out for, you know, new things and new people to react to, just to, you know, keep the variety up on my channel. And so, yeah, we should probably get this thing started then. So, yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
1 down, 3 to go. Welcome viewers, I am Vivat Veritas, and it's time for week 2 of Deltarune December. Last week we looked at Chris, and this week
they did a Chris video too. Okay, I'm gonna look at that.
The visage of Susie Deltarune. Susie is a character I've wanted to get into for a bit, and she's come up occasionally in other video essays. Funnily enough, the Chris ones most commonly. So it'll be great to dedicate some specific time to going over her as a character in the spotlight. Without further ado, let's all take a journey along the road of character analysis and see what we can glean about the purple dinosaur lizard creature that we all know and love. Join me, won't you? Firstly, it's important to set up what we know about Susie herself, which is actually pretty little. We know that she's a kid in hometown like all of Chris's classmates and has probably been here for a bit. It's demonstrated that she has a consistent history of delinquency and misbehavior that stretch back decently far by a few different accounts. Aside from that, people know very little about her outside the fact that she's scary. Most don't get close, and Susie doesn't let them. Susie's defining characteristic is her unique personality and how it intersects with the other members of the fun gang and the entire conceit of Deltarune. Susie is, at least a little, the trope of the bully who isn't actually awful and mean, but is just misunderstood. As a victim of bullying at school, I'm less sympathetic to this trope than others. Just because someone has an excuse for their behavior doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know there's that. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, granted, I mean, maybe it was just because I was always like the bigger kid in school, like physically. I never really got bullied that much. But with my Asperger's, I was always very much, you know, I was always kind of off to the side, just doing my own thing, and that did result in me being lonely from time to time. But, you know, and again, I know, you know, and again, I know it is, very few people, you know, who do bully, they don't do it for no reason, whether, you know, it's just a sense of power, or they don't know how to, you know, get their feelings out if they have any, or anything like that. Though then again, you do sometimes get the actual ones who actually are doing it maliciously and stuff like that. So that's kind of sad. But at the same time, I mean, like, it's the whole thing. As they said, just because you have a reason for doing something bad doesn't mean particularly that you're deserving of forgiveness. Because at the end of the day, you still did it in the first place.
A bit like Chris with their ominous activities though, this doesn't make her irredeemable or even a bad person. Like everyone here, she's a kid too, dealing with her own problems without the maturity or help of others around her. Susie is similar to Chris in more ways than just this though. Susie isolates herself from the rest of society as well, but this is done in a much more active way than just withdrawing. Instead, Susie asserts her own place in this world, not living on the outskirts like Chris. She is loud, brash, and commanding. If she wants to be somewhere, then she will be, and curses to anyone who doesn't want her there. It definitely paints a portrait of her past life experiences, that she has to defend her own existence in any space and take what she can, as it was never offered to her.
Which, again, kind of points towards the whole thing of her potentially being either in, like, an orphan, which, which means that, in a less savory type of orphanage, the kids might have to basically fight for resources because they're not handed out equally. Or if she's from a, either a broken home or one that's, just not that good or well off, potentially, Yeah.
There's a specific tidbit regarding Chris that a lot of people find interesting that was revealed by the Spampton sweepstakes information. The start of the game isn't the first time that Susie and Chris have interacted. Chris has honestly been the victim of Susie's bullying for a while, though it's unclear why. It's likely because Chris is a bit of an easy pick, but it's not like they ever seem to have much of a reaction to whatever Susie has done or said. The incident depicted in the Spampton sweepstakes of Chris saying something to Susie that made her flip out highlights another interesting quirk of Susie's personality. Despite her posturing and aggression, she's actually very sensitive. It's one of the very reasons that she pushes people away so much. She's worried that people will think differently of her, that people will hate or dislike her, that she's learnt to draw first blood as a coping mechanism. It creates this vicious cycle where she asserts herself as the monster that other people wish to see, which reinforces the way people see her. We see this in the Dark World as well, with her being so used to the world she lives in and the terrible lessons she's learnt that she butts head with Rousey so much, leading to her short villain arc.
Yeah. Which, given specifically, the whole saying, like, everybody's the hero of their own story. How messed up, do you have to be, even just momentarily, to reject being called a hero and purposefully call yourself a villain? Granted, even in the game, besides her just playing with Lancer, essentially, and just goofing off with him. They didn't really do anything that villainous. But again, it's just the whole thing that, to push the moniker of hero away and to brand yourself the villain. There's obviously something going on there.
To be fair, though, it's difficult to define what she does with Lancer as villainous.
Yes,
That's
exactly,
kind of the point that I was mentioning earlier, though. Susie isn't a bad person. She isn't a villain. The worst thing she does, try to kill Lancer and, I guess, Chris, is because she feels betrayed. She just wants to be herself, mess around and not take things so seriously. Ultimately, she doesn't want pressure, because it's only been bad for her in the past. This is one of the reasons that Chris is so important for Susie. Chris doesn't judge Susie for a potential myriad of reasons, and gives her a place where she can be herself, free of expectations. Susie, who isn't used to having friends or seemingly people who actually care for her well-being, is more prepared to be responsible for Chris because she sees them as something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. The Dark Worlds are a true blessing for Susie considering this. She can exist in a world that allows her to be free despite the dangers and troubles. Lancer is honestly a great influence on her, as he has this very unique type of villainy which isn't so much evil, but more comical. It's a style rooted in humour and a very childlike sense of superiority. Very Saturday morning cartoon-esque.
Given that, potentially Lancer, I don't see him as, little kid, but I do see Lancer as being at least, 1 or 2 years younger, or at least the equivalent of, the main group there. So, the fact that he is so childish makes total and complete sense.
Even with a rocky start to her relationship with Rousey, eventually this connection becomes important to her as well, both in a character progression sense as well as in-universe. Essentially, this is a place where, for the first time, she doesn't need to be aggressive or violent to have a sense of control. And there's the moneymaker. The theme of control within Deltarune is a big one, and Susie interacts with it a lot.
I have heard control as a topic so many times in these videos. And, mostly it's around, Chris, given that, we control them, and, and they are not just truly a blank slate, they're an actual being who we are taking agency away from. But then, it starts spreading out. Again, it's going, if you go to Noel, there's the whole thing about her wanting control, to not be just alone with her and her mother, because she's already lost her sister. She's on the verge of potentially losing her father. And then Susie, and then, as they pointed out with Susie right here, I mean, again, as I said before, there's, some evidence pointing towards the fact that, she doesn't have that good of a life. And I would imagine a lot of people would want more control over their life. And when you have a world like the Dark World that seemingly bends to your will almost, that's almost like heaven.
Susie tells you that your choices don't matter at the start of the game. Within the universe of Deltarune itself, it's meant to be her telling Chris that she is in control no matter what, and whatever Chris does won't impact things. This tug of war of control continues in the rest of Chapter 1, with you unable to control Susie and having to help your enemies before she slaughters them. This control that Susie feels like she needs is a trademark of kids who have grown up in unstable environments, so it's not a surprise that it's part of the package of her past.
Yeah.
Where this really comes to a head, though, is in contrast to King. The fact that a comparison is explicitly drawn between Susie and King through the "quiet people piss me off" line should be seen as a clue for us to look deeper at further similarities between them. Aside from superficial similarities, Susie and King both have a complex around being in control. King's perspective stems from being perceived as abandoned by the Lightners, cast aside in an abandoned closet where no one interacts or engages with them in any way. King wants to take his kingdom back by force if he has to, and then bring this darkness into the light world to make the Lightners feel the same pain that he did, to seize back control from them and put it in his hands. Eagle-eyed, or eared I guess, viewers would be able to notice that this is somewhat similar to Susie's situation. Both of them are asserting a place in society that does not want them, and reclaiming the control put out of their reach using force and aggression. However, by the time that Susie and King actually meet, Susie is not sympathetic to him at all, which is interesting. Part of the reason for this is the type of villainy that Susie and King both embody, something I briefly mentioned earlier in the video. With Lancer, Susie is much more laid back and more generally mean, foiling Chris and Rouse with skirmishes and inconveniences. She doesn't want to kill them or anything, she just wants to be free to do what she wants.
she just wants to be free to be an annoyance.
Which, because she's Susie, is mostly just to joke around and be a nuisance. However,
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
a contrast even to how we first see her in the light world, as if her time in the dark world, especially with Lancer, has already given her a bit of levity and happiness. In the light world, Susie is menacing in a way that I kind of forgot after all of chapters 1 and 2. I mean, she does actively threaten your life. She's pretty awful here. That's what happens when she feels unable to do anything apart from reinforcing everyone's opinions of her. However, experiencing the freedom that the dark worlds have to offer changes that a little. It's not until Lancer shows up, someone who, unlike Rouse, absolutely does not judge Susie whatsoever, to a degree of complete obliviousness, where Susie realizes that this experience might not be all that bad. Then the game happens, and I'll spare you my summary of Chapter 1, but essentially Lancer helps reframe Susie's approach. He shows her, probably unintentionally, that having a buddy to go through things with and have fun with makes all the difference in the world. This makes his betrayal even worse for Susie and brings her back to that dark place she was in at the start of the game, but even still gets through to her by talking it out. Lancer's great, man. Him being great is part of what makes the King reveal work so well, especially for Susie. The thing is, King is fucking evil. Like, he will kill anyone and anything to get what he wants. He really is a mirror as to what Susie could have become with enough time, power, and bitterness. Thanks to the fun gang though, Susie doesn't get a chance to get to that point. King, despite his minions and Lancer, feels alone. He feels abandoned by the Lightners, and this corrupts him, his soul cast into true darkness. The power he obtains is for one purpose and one purpose only, to rule over both dark and light worlds. Susie thankfully doesn't need this, thanks to the power of thrash machines, nature's salsa, and yes, friendship.
Oh, God. All these references back to Chapter 1, which I haven't played in a long time at thinking about it. It's really making me think. Because, like, even, like, going back and, like, thinking about it, I know that, like, Chapter 2 was... it is a lot better made than Chapter 1, and I'm pretty sure that's literally just because Chapter 1 is, like, literally the introduction to the game, and usually the scope of the game expands as you go along it. So, I'm imagining, how good 3 and 4 are going to be when they come out. But it's just all these weird things, because, like, granted, I did a reaction to a Half-Bred Chaos reaction, just asking why Chris is so weird. But really, you think about it, like, a lot of the characters in this game are just really weird when you start to think about it.
Susie rises above the lot that life has cast her and creates a space for her and, for the first time, those she wishes to protect, to be safe and strong in the face of calamity. But what of her character in Chapter 2? Well, the theme of control and freedom is certainly still prevalent. After all, the only time where you, as a player, can properly exert your control over Noel is when Susie is absent. That brings us to the big point, though, which is Noel Holiday. Though this...
never thought of it that way. The only time you truly get control in the game is when Susie isn't there. Okay.
This is relevant even before Chapter 2. Like in the Chris video, I want to talk about how this relationship affects Susie, but it'll certainly come up again in the Noel
Susie
video.
has all the best
Susie
rights.
feels differently around Noel than others, and it's definitely a unique relationship. Instead of being judgment-free or otherwise indifferent, Susie kind of actively cares about what Noel thinks of her. She tolerates a lot more teasing from her, and of course, Susie never really bullied Noel. It seems like she might have had a bit of interest in her before everything we see in Deltarune, and with how quickly Noel seems interested as well, I wouldn't be surprised if it was reciprocal. What
there's
Susie
definitely
has with
a crush
Noel,
going on there on both sides.
Is someone she can be vulnerable with. Of course she can be relaxed with the others, but Noel is someone who doesn't just tolerate or understand her imperfections, she's someone who likes them, and this does wonders for Susie's confidence. Her actual character doesn't change that much from chapters 1 to 2, but we definitely see her soften up a bit more, which makes sense, as she's not the main focus of chapter 2 anyway. Noel is also an incentive for Susie to maintain the emotional openness that she has begun to exhibit, as Susie very clearly does want to be closer with Noel, a contrast compared to someone like Chris or Ralsei, who they kind of stumbled into. It gives Susie something to work towards, to encourage her, which is really important for the future of her characterization and the game as a whole. I know there are a lot of theories around the idea of Susie leaving the party again or facing some kind of betrayal, none have wowed me though, and it's my belief that the relationship she forges with Noel will be instrumental in both of their outcomes.
Well, that being said, there was... Oh god, I watched this a while ago, so I can't remember which one specifically, but there was somebody in the video, they talked about how, like, potentially there was the idea that they came up, that they had, that, like, Susie would leave the party, but it was because they found, but it was because she found out about us, like, controlling Chris, and learning that Chris's actions weren't their own, they were us controlling them, and that might set her off. And with her, gaining this, a friendship with Chris, and through all the adventures, we don't know when this would happen, if it does, that she might leave the party, but then she's going out, like, and attacking, not to hurt Chris, but to get to us specifically. So I could potentially see that happening.
Susie is a complex kid, just like Chris, who acts out from a lack of attention, control, and closeness. Through her experiences with the fun gang, both in and out of the Dark Worlds, she learns to open up more and not become necessarily nicer, but more self-aware and considerate to those around her. That in turn leads to better outcomes for her and those around her. A really inspirational and positive message to be depicting.
It's a good feedback
Not only
loop.
that, but Susie acts as a commentary on the concept of freedom, how it can be given and taken away. And no doubt will her character path intersect with the grander picture in the coming chapters. I, for one, am very excited to see what she has in store for us. And with that, week 2 is officially done. This is a much awaited topic for me to talk about, so I hope I've done it to Love me some
Very
Susie.
nice.
I highly doubt this will be the last time I talk about Susie on this channel though, but I think this covers some pretty basic ground. Hell, I might even talk about her before another chapter comes out, but I've got some plans for that. Anyway, thanks as always for watching, and for the good reception of the Chris video too. I think this one will be a lot less
I have to
controversial,
watch that
and
one
also probably a
next.
bit more novel, since there's less Susie analysis, both on this channel and on YouTube as a whole. A magnificent thank you to my marvelous patrons.
So there we go. Again, very good video. And I'm definitely giving Veritas here a subscribe, because I definitely want to see more of their videos. I'm going to have to watch that Chris one as well. And all the different themes that seem to like appear in this game, it truly is complex. I can definitely see, going back to the whole idea about like how like this game was based off of a dream that Toby Fox had, but he didn't know how to actually make it into a game. I can very much see that the years that have gone into just trying to work out how like Deltarune as a thing would exist, because so far from everything from like the story to like gameplay mechanics is so strange and like intertwined and like so complex. Like again, the whole thing with like, again, knowing that Susie potentially comes from, you know, not a too good home, but also just thinking about all the different ways that that the theme that she kind of embodies, especially in chapter 1, was just control, which I had never even thought of before. Very interesting. Yeah, so again, I'm definitely going to have to watch their Chris video. I'll probably do that, you know, hopefully sometime today. Recorded, I mean. And I can't wait for the Birdley and Noel's videos to come out. So, yeah, but yeah, that's going to be it for now. So, yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And, yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.